Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas, Wacker, and with me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman. And welcome to our Daytona 500 recap episode, our fifth and final of this past Speed Week. It's been the most hefty amount of episodes that we've done on this show as
Just
of
a little
yet.
bit, yeah.
It's we've gone through Speed Weeks day by day, race by race, and it's been quite the ride. And it all ended last night, very late for the Daytona 500, and more so for you, Kyle. But
about 3 hours difference.
yeah, 3 hours, but a long day yesterday. So as per usual, we get our plans kind of thrown up in the air, so to speak, as the Xfinity Series race was as well with the Truck Series. So it all kind of works out at the end of the day here with recapping it the day after. And man, oh man, there's some different storylines coming out of this Daytona 500. Some good, some bad, but we've got it all to recap here in today's episode. But before we get into all of that, how are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing good. It was nice for starters that we don't have to sit here and wait for the race to kind of start again now, because that's what it was kind of looking like as we record this at 4 p.m. Eastern here. It was looking like this was when the race would restart on like lap 16 at most of yesterday once we got to that point. But thankfully we were able to get the race in late, because there's nothing worse than a rain delay that gets pushed to the next day. It's always best to get it in the day of advertisement. So it was nice in that regard. But yes, definitely not the 500 we were necessarily expecting. There's a lot to talk about from this race and a lot of fallout that I'm sure will play into the rest of the season as well.
Yeah, there's some big implications from this race, to say the least. And we'll get into just quickly on the pre-race. I thought they did a terrific job before we get into the actual race itself. They did a great job on the features that they did. Bubba Wallace with 2311 Racing, Michael Jordan, I thought they did a pretty good job on that one. The Kyle Larson one was something that I wasn't expecting as well, in terms of how they handled that entire situation and having an sit-down interview, and him just addressing it head on. And that was really nice to see. They could have done a little bit more, I think, on his transformation over the past year. But nonetheless, I think they did a pretty good job with that. And it was so great to have Chris Myers back with the Fox family there for the NASCAR coverage, and did a great job kind of telling the story throughout the pre-race. And Tom Rinaldi did an exceptional job on the Ryan Newman feature as well. We didn't know a lot of that stuff because they've kind of kept it to themselves, as you would expect. And it was very nice that Newman's parents and Ryan Newman himself opened up with that feature. So just a great overall pre-race show, Kyle. I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah, I thought it was really strong. And of course, Chris Myers is one of the best at his job in the entire sports industry. So having him lead the ship was great. It was nice having Boyer and Gordon also in a bit of a different role as well. We know them as the color commentators from throughout this week, but having them in kind of that more desk analyst role for this was a bit refreshing as well for the opener. And yeah, some really strong segments. Tom Rinaldi's one of the best in sport media, and anytime he does a segment or a feature, is going to be a tearjerker, and it was a fantastic job he did with Ryan Newman in that piece. Of course, the kind of sit down that they had with Jordan, Hamlin, and Wallace was really strong as well. It was a nice blend of serious topics and just kind of lighthearted fun, which was nice. And then the Larson one, yeah, it was nice that they didn't shy away from it. I wish that they dove more into his transformation over those months, as you mentioned, rather than focusing mainly on the actual incident, what led up to him being even in a situation to say those things, and then now him getting a second chance. They kind of glossed over the main part of it for me, and that's the transformation that he's gone over and the things that he's done and the steps he's taken to better himself as a person. Wish they focused more on that in it, but regardless, I'm glad they didn't shy away from it either. So yeah, very strong opening. I wish it was 3 hours earlier, but regardless, it was a very strong opening nonetheless.
I disagree on that, but that's biased West Coast over here, trying to at least get to watch the whole pre-race and not have to get up so early.
You'd rather watch the pre-race 15 laps and then 6 hours of rain. That's okay.
No, it's not that, but I just think I don't mind it ending under the lights as well if it were to end normally without rain or something like that. I mean, you can't control the weather. It's just going to happen.
No, but you can read the radar and know what's coming.
I just don't think NASCAR was in a position to bump it up 3 hours when they looked at the radar. I just don't think that that's realistic with the coverage.
It's back-to-back years now that it's rained as well. Like, Florida weather is going to rain most of the time in that pocket that you're scheduling the race for. Like it's a continued thing. It's not necessarily an isolated incident, but nonetheless, we'll get into the race.
Yeah, we've got an emotional tribute on lap 3 for Dale Earnhardt right out of the gate there. They did a great job with that. Made sure I did my salute to the late, great Dale Earnhardt. Yeah, an emotional time nonetheless. It's crazy to think it's been 20 years since his passing in the 500. That entire race kind of came back at the end of things as well, with the end result and how the end result and the winner and how that all kind of ties in with the history on who won the Daytona 500 in this one. So a great job there. But unfortunately, on that same lap, Derek Cope decided to kind of spoil the party, and he blows a tire to bring out the first caution of the race, and he would be done for the day in what is hopefully his final Cup Series start. Just disappointing kind of start there for Derek Cope, a guy that took a spot essentially from a guy like Ty Dillon or some other characters that missed the Daytona 500 due to speed, and he didn't have an open entry car. He has a charter, and he takes up a spot, and he's already done by lap 4. So disappointing start there for the 500. Just didn't quite get that momentum. Didn't really get to soak in that lap 3 before caution kind of fell. But it didn't take long for that secondary caution to come, Kyle. It was on lap 14. Disaster struck on the back straightaway of the Daytona 500. A push from Christopher Bell to Eric Almirola goes wrong down the back straightaway. The 10-car spins back up into traffic, collecting 16 cars. Numerous were out of the race after that. I think 11 cars in total ended up having a DNF because of that. Some stayed around for the weather delay to try and maybe see if they could get it fixed. But for those teams, it was just kind of sit and waiting game once the red flag did fall because of rain. But a terrible sequence of events here that really dampened the entire Daytona 500. This is where the race kind of fell apart already on lap 14 of 200. When you lose that many cars so early on in the race, so many competitive cars at that, it just takes away from the excitement. And then all the drivers that are left in the race want to play it cautious. They want to take it easy so that they get the car in one piece to the finish. And that was largely the case for the amount of the remainder of the race. But this wreck specifically, it was just kind of an accordion effect. And we've seen this in the past from Eric Almirola. He can't control the bump, it seems. Christopher Bell being a bit over-aggressive, I would say, as well, just didn't quite lock straight with Eric Almirola. But at the same time, I feel like Eric Almirola, this is like the third or fourth time this has happened where you make contact with the rear bumper of that 10 car, and he's spinning out of control, and numerous cars are out of it. So I'm not putting the blame on Eric Almirola. I'm just saying that that's a pattern that I've seen over the past couple of super speedway races. But a terrible, heartbreaking start for a lot of these teams for the Daytona 500, Kyle.
Yeah, I want to start on the lap 3. And for starters, awesome to see that. But there were some really kind of weird aspects to the lap as well. Harvick was leading. Cope blows a tire in the same turn that Earnhardt blew the tire in the 90 Daytona 500, which Cope passed him and won it. Like, there was some weird stuff going on in that lap, to say the least. But the big thing is the lap 14 wreck. And yeah, I mentioned it as well. It seems like a couple of times here recently, Eric Almirola has been kind of the one that gets turned into a wreck. And we see from some other drivers. Some drivers are able to handle those kind of pushes that maybe swirl you up a little bit. Like Hamlin, for example, at one point last night had a really strong push from Harvick and kind of gave him a hand gesture out the window. There's some drivers that can handle those kind of pushes, and it kind of seems like Almirola isn't maybe one of those that can take like the extra aggressive push or something like that. But the onus is completely on Christopher Bell in that wreck. He's moving in the push. He's aggressively pushing way too early. That's one where you get the push and you drag the brake and try and ease it on the guy in front of you. There's no reason to push that hard that early. And it's a harsh word to use, but it kind of ruined the rest of the race when you look at the amount of cars it took out, when you look at the fact that there just wasn't enough energy in the pack for the lead lap cars to build up anything significant on an inside row or anything like that. And when you have the big one, after it, you usually get train single file racing. You just hope that the big one comes in like the last 10% of the race, not the first 10% of the race. And unfortunately, for this Daytona 500, we saw it in that first bit of the race, and it affected the rest of the race, as we saw some pretty bland, lackluster racing the rest of the way. In previous super speedway package races with this package, we haven't seen the big one early. We've seen them race the entire way, and it's been awesome. It's been why so many people love this package. it was just unfortunate the way the circumstances went in this one. And it took out a lot of good cars. It took out my race winner pick and Ryan Blaney, a really strong car up front, and Eric Almirola, tons of really strong cars throughout this race. The pole sitter as well, Alex Bowman. There was a ton of really strong cars involved in this wreck, and it kind of set the scene for how the rest of this race would go.
Yeah, Alex Bowman, Eric Jones, Ryan Newman, David Reagan, Daniel Suarez, Eric Almirola, Matt DiBenedetto, Anthony Alfredo, Chris Buescher, and Ryan Blaney all had their Daytona 500 dreams come to an abrupt end on lap 14. A lot of those guys were favorites that to be there at the end of the race. Fillers. No, and large majority of those were involved in my fantasy lineup, so that was a great start to the race as well. Playing it safe, and my picks all get involved in that one, so that was great. Tyler Reddick, William Byron, Martin Truex Jr., Kurt Busch, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Michael McDowell, and Jamie McMurray all suffered damage on top of that as well. But they would continue. They would, to varying degrees. There would be some that were multiple laps down, but they were able to still carry on. And some of them were actually involved in the main pack for the majority of the remainder of the race. After that, they had got their cars fixed. So impressive in credit to those teams that were able to, get a game plan together over the red flag. That happened literally less than 5 minutes after this wreck happened. Torrential downpour covered the entire track, and we were forced into a long weather delay. So tough start for these guys. They were all packed up, and by the time the series got basically going again, all the drivers that were involved in that wreck and a DNF, they were basically back home already in North Carolina. Like it is disappointing on that regard that there's so much hype, so much buildup for this race, and a lot of those guys were in the mix of that storyline. You feel so bad for Ryan Newman as well, going out there for redemption and trying to make his mark again and try and go for that Daytona 500 trophy, and he didn't even get 15 laps into it before his dream came to an end. Ryan Blaney, second place last year. He's out earlier, winner pick, obviously. So it was just kind of varying degrees of success there for some of these guys, and a lot of disappointment early on for many, many teams. The amount of hours and hard work goes into building these cars it's just terrible to see that one push at the front of the field goes wrong. And as per usual, into turn 3 is the treacherous spot at these super speedway tracks where the big wrecks usually happen. And it was definitely the case in this one as well. And as I said, another torrential downpour in the Daytona 500. 5 hours, 40 minutes, and 28 seconds was the total time of this one. There was some skeptics out there that were saying that they probably wouldn't get it underway, but thankfully Mother Nature did cooperate eventually there. They got the track dry in as quick a manner as possible. It's Bob Pockris and all the guys in the media center were going outside and testing out the rain and seeing how much is actually downpouring out there. But yeah, just a disappointing kind of start to this entire race. All this buildup, all this hype, the pre-race, everything led up to lap 14. And if they had just waited maybe 1-2 laps more, we would have been under red flag, and all those guys would have still been in contention for the Daytona 500 trophy.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how that goes sometimes. And yeah, we had the lightning delay first, and then a few minutes into that, it eventually started pouring. We knew the rain was going to come quickly into this race. And you would have thought that people would have been a little more tame with how they were driving. We even saw some onboard stuff they showed after the restart in lead up to the restart when they came back on air with live content with Denny Hamlin's on board. And we saw even at the back, there was quite a bit of jostling and whatnot early on in this race. So I don't really get why people were doing so. If you just if you just kind of let out the laps and just kind of let them go by lap like 19, 20, you would have had rain. Everyone knew it was coming, so there was really no reason to go and race for it because they're not calling the race at lap 20. It's literally not possible. So it's not like you're racing for anything in that regard. It's just extremely frustrating to see it happen, just over-aggression too early for no reason, and kind of ruin the rest of the race as we saw with how things played out.
It really did. It was pretty disappointing how the remainder of the race played out. But once we did get back underway, a lot of the teams that were preparing the car, we had a text exchange about this, and I kind of want to get into this. Some of these guys are repairing their cars in 6 minutes or less to get back out there to meet minimum speed instead of going to the garage area with this 6-minute crash clock that they have. The damaged vehicle policy, if you want to get into the specific name of it, is a joke, in my opinion. It is absolutely one of the dumbest rules that NASCAR has. They repair their cars in such a quick succession here that they just put Bear Bond all over the car to try and stick things that probably shouldn't be sticking where it should be. And then they have William Byron, who cost Quinn Houff in the race here, leaving debris, scattering it all over the track because they aren't preparing the car properly. And Quinn Houff takes out Chase Briscoe in the process on lap 38. That kind of all ties in together there because Byron's quarter panel or rear bumper is hanging off the car and everything's falling all over the place. If we go back to the system where there is no DVP, then I would say that wreck wouldn't have even happened, where they go to the garage, they fix it, they go a couple of laps down. There's no pressure to actually fix it in 6 minutes, which is an unrealistic amount of time for that amount of damage to be fixed. I just think it's totally stupid. It defeats the purpose. It's sending cars out there that are actually less safe than if they went to the garage area and fixed it. In my opinion, maybe the stats don't line up like that, but from a eye test, I feel like there's more incidents with these guys and their bare bonded cars going out there and causing a caution than when they did and put an entire rear back panel on it, a rear bumper on it in the garage, go a couple of laps down, and it would save a lot of time and it would save a lot of cautions at the end of it. So I don't know what you think of it. The Quinn Houff incident is entirely up for debate here, but yeah, go with your rebuttal, I guess.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on the DVP because it's a dumb thing to kind of spend time on for the Daytona 500. But essentially, I like the rule in terms of what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to keep unnecessarily beaten up cars from going back on track and just kind of being there for the sake of being there. The 6 minute thing is a bit ridiculous. But in the case of William Byron, his car shouldn't have been out there in the first place because the part on the back end, which is required, wasn't on properly anyways. So it's something where I don't know if that's necessarily a DVP thing or something where he should have been black flagged earlier, something like that. But I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I'm somewhere in the middle. Like, it's not like, yes, this is the best rule ever and it's fantastic the way it is, but I also don't think it's a terrible rule. I like the idea of it. They just need to figure out a way for it to be more effective because, as you mentioned, there are people kind of getting around it, and William Byron's case is kind of one of the ones that you would look at and be like, okay, something here isn't working exactly. So I like the idea of the rule. I like what it's supposed to do. Just in actuality, it hasn't actually worked out. And the other thing to it is of course, we don't have the stats or anything like that, but I remember seeing somewhere at some point where there was more debris cautions prior to the introduction of these rules and this kind of racing. I don't know if that's something where there was more kind of ghost cautions for fake debris kind of things, just to have caution breaks and get commercials in prior to stage racing, and it's more the stage breaks that are the element of that or whatnot. But we don't have 50 lap down cars coming out and getting in the way of people anymore, which is kind of what the rule is designed to do. It's just in instances like this, it kind of, there's a middle ground that we need to find.
It irks me. I'll say that. I just think it's a stupid rule. But we can move on to stage one, where Denny Hamlin, the two-time defending Daytona 500, sorry, Daytona 500 champion, in his bid for 3 in a row, wins stage one. Pretty dominating fashion there, as we saw when they came back. Single file racing, the train up against the wall for the large majority of the remainder of the race. And Hamlin just executed it the best. He had Kyle Busch behind him there, coming to the final lap of the stage, kind of as his teammate buffer. And Kyle got shuffled. Then Denny Hamlin was able to just kind of block that run that did come from Ryan Preece and just held them off. Ryan Preece gets some stage points there. Good for your fantasy lineup there with the randomizer. Austin Dillon there third. Kyle Larson fourth. What a joke this stupid randomizer is that he gets that many stage points, but nonetheless,
don't worry, Alan Cavana doesn't like it either very much, so he's on your side with it.
Austin Cindric, Christopher Bell, Darrell Wallace Jr., Joey Logano, Ross Chastain, and Cole Custer all collected stage points in stage one there. So there were still some heavy hitters still remaining in this one, despite that big wreck early on. But Denny Hamlin looking like he was on par or set to go out there and have a really, really good shot of claiming that three in a row title for the Daytona 500 and be the first person to ever accomplish that feat. But not too much. It was an exciting finish to the stage, at least. You know, we had a little bit of shuffling, but besides that, there was nothing really that happened after that Quinn Houff wreck. And Denny Hamlin just kind of set sail and was just controlling the pack, going to his own tempo, his own speed, running at his own pace. And yeah, I don't know. The stage, I just have a down feeling on this entire Daytona 500 entirely. But your thoughts on maybe the end of the stage one there?
Yeah, the ends of the stages were like the only exciting parts of the races, of the race, except for when people pit and came out. Except we went to commercial break for those for some reason. But no, the end of the stages were kind of your trial runs for the end of the race, and that's kind of what people do. They try out different moves, they try out different blocks, they try out a lot of different stuff at the end of those stages, so they know what works, what doesn't when we get to the end of the race. And Denny Hamlin just kind of runs the show. We know there's a lot of luck involved in super speedways. That's why I busted the randomizer, mainly as a kind of a comedic kind of joke kind of thing, just to see how well a random lineup does. But in all actuality, there is a ton of skill that comes into super speedways, and Denny Hamlin is clearly on another level right now. He is otherworldly at super speedways. He knows when to drop back. He knows when to be at the front. He knows how to stay at the front. And we saw this we saw that in this race. Yes, there was a lot of train racing, so his numbers get boosted up because of the laps led and everything like that. But when push came to shove at the end of the stages, he was able to command it. He was able to get out front. He was able to stay out front. He was able to block, and he was able to get the stage wins, which is something very, very impressive. And I think shows kind of the underlying skill that is involved in super speedway racing.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Hamlin's a great super speedway racer, but I think the pack does a lot to help him in that situation as well. Like they just kind of just let him have the front and just let him pace the field to an extent. I mean, they can't really do much. Everybody's just staying single file in this one. But yeah, stage two. Didn't really have anything to talk about in this one either. We go to green flag pit stops. Fox decides that is the best time after green flag pit stops to go to cut to a commercial break when there's actual passing for the first time in the stage. And lo and behold, a caution comes out during that commercial break where Christopher Bell has a flat left rear tire, sending him spinning. Bubba Wallace narrowly avoids it, so very close call there for him. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Kyle Larson would not be quite as lucky. They get caught up in it as well. They get some damage. Stenhouse more so than Larson. Larson was able to continue at a pretty consistent level there, but Christopher Bell goes, I think, one lap down by the end of it, and then he ended up back on the lead lap. But yeah, unfortunate there for Bell. Was actually running a pretty decent race after the wreck that he caused in the opening 15 laps there. But the Toyotas were pretty strong there. It seemed like they were working together. And then just, I don't know why he got the flat tire there. They changed right sides on that pit stop, but the left side tire kind of failed him there. So unfortunate for Christopher Bell that he didn't really get a shot here with Adam Stevens as his new crew chief to go really compete for the victory here. Was kind of taken away from him with the lack of cautions and the lack of aggressive driving that we saw after that as well. But yeah, unfortunate there for Stenhouse and Christopher Bell and Larson, Kyle.
Yeah, it was just a weird situation there, and we didn't really see where the contact that kind of cut the tire came from, but you could see going into the corner, it was getting pretty flat there, and you could see him start to wiggle, and you knew something was going to happen. It was honestly lucky that it wasn't anything more significant based off of where everyone was at on the track, and the fact that really the people involved only kind of went like a lap or two down and were able to still stay on track was kind of impressive there. We don't really know what happened with kind of the second pack of cars there either, with Kaz Gralla, Corey LaJoie, Jamie McMurray. They had a bit of a spin there, and Gralla, we know his right rear just kind of ignited and just kept coming on fire. So we don't really know what happened on that one, but yeah, unfortunate for Bell there. Of course, we know if you cause the wreck, you probably get through it for the big one. So that's why he was still in there by the end of, or in the mix come stage two. But what a commercial that was, eh? Oh, just as soon as we're getting some kind of excitement, we see Denny Hamlin cut it 3 wide, and all of a sudden we're in a full screen commercial.
Chase Elliott was there, and they're trying to lap a car, and it was like, we'll be right back after. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me?
And I was like, there's certainly going to be a wreck here when you look at the different speeds, like everything, and sure enough, boom, they come back, and hey, there was a crash. Just, yeah, the pre-race was good.
Time.
Some of the in-race decisions and stuff were very questionable, to say the least, in terms of the directing or any of the shots or anything like that. But it's what you expect for NASCAR at some points.
Yeah. Speaking of Kaz Gralla there, he, on that same kind of caution break, his right rear tire basically caught on fire, and it would not stop catching on fire. And as a result of that, he would lose brakes and he would be done for the day. Just unfortunate there for Kaz Gralla. Was kind of keeping his nose clean for the most part, just kind of hanging out in the back. And something happened there that just kind of sparked that thing to ignite. And unfortunately for Kaz Gralla, in his open entry that he qualified his way into, to making this race, his chances at a Daytona 500 trophy come to an end there. after the Christopher Bell wreck. So unfortunate there for Casgrol. He was running a pretty solid race, I thought, but he didn't really have to. It was out of his control. I don't think he really did anything wrong the whole night. But
no, they were staying clean. They were staying in the back. It was kind of like the same Spire model where it's you got a competitive car once you get in the pack, but there's no reason to be up there for you. So you just stay there and you wait to the finish. And we saw with the Spire cars, they both ended up picking up top 10s. Casgrala, in kind of that interview afterwards, he said that, yeah, they were trending towards getting a top 10 if they were staying clean and everything. We still don't know what happened there. But it was an unfortunate early end for them because for colleague there, we're going to see them again this upcoming week. So it's a quick turnaround for them. But for Kaz Grala, I wanted to see him at the end because we know how good he's been on super speedways at the lower levels. And I was hoping we would get to see that at the end and see if he can make anything work there. But an unfortunate early end for one of the open entries.
Yeah. End of stage 2. Denny Hamlin sweeps the stages at the Daytona 500 this season. I mean, he just pulled it off perfectly. Had another blocker there in Bubba Wallace, but Bubba was a little bit more aggressive than what Kyle Busch was to end the first stage there. So he made a move to the inside. Bubba had the lead going down the back straightaway, but that outside line prevailed at the end of things where Denny Hamlin got a good push. I think it was from Kevin Harvick. And he gets to the green and white checkered flag first. He gets 2 playoff points to end the night here for the Daytona 500. Kevin Harvick, Bubba Wallace, Chase Elliott, Austin Dillon, Joey Logano, Michael McDowell, Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch, and Brad Keselowski all earned stage points there to end the second stage. So, yeah, like I said earlier, some heavy hitters. Nothing really happened to these guys up until this point. Some of the favorites, some of the big storylines were still involved in this one. Hamlin going for 3 in a row. A lot of these guys still remaining going for their first or second career Daytona 500 trophies. So, still a lot to play for at that point in time. But the big thing in stage 3 was just the boring racing. It was just really bland, lackluster.
For most of it, it's understandable, given the amount of cars left. You want to get to the finish, all that kind of stuff. And so I understood it in that regard. But as it got to 15 and then 10 and then 5, you're just like, when are we doing stuff here, people? Like that's the big part for me, because I can understand it from lap 16 through to lap like 185, 190 even. After that, it's when, okay, this is when you did all that single file stuff so that you could be here in these last 10. Are you just here to finish, or are you here to win the race? That's what it is for me. And for a lot of them, it seemed like they were there to finish.
I was so bad. I was so mad. Like it was just so excruciatingly painful to watch that race. I felt like just single file up against the wall. You can't do anything as a fan. When you know the potential
that the cars have as well.
When there are aggressive drivers out there still that are willing to make moves. Yeah. No, everybody was just playing scared. They were playing just cautious. It was just ridiculous. But the race was kind of decided here before we get to the finish at the final green flag pit stops, how the sequence all unfolded there it honestly blows my mind how some of these team strategists are sometimes this stupid. Ford's pit first, Chevrolet's pit second, and Toyota's go an extra 2 laps after the Chevrolets and pit third. It is clearly the best situation to pit first. Like I don't think there's any argument there. You're going to pit first. You get you minimize the risk, and at the same time, you come out. You're going to be at full speed the longest out of all those guys that are going to be pitting here in your manufacturer bunches. And the Fords, I don't know why they think that. Why everybody else thinks it was such a good move. It's a bonehead move if you don't do what the Fords did. But they kind of just let them do it throughout the entire race. For the green flag pit stops, the Fords always finish first, Chevrolet second, and Toyota's third. And it ended up costing the Toyotas at the most part because they were leading the pack prior to green flag pit stops, and they pit last, and they ended up having the worst pit sequence I've ever seen in terms of space between the 4 guys. Bell has a problem there. Truex is still in that mix, but he's multiple laps down, so he's not going to be up to speed. And Bubba Wallace has a tire that he has loose at the end of things. Denny Hamlin executed his pit stop really well. Kyle Busch is in second there, but there is at least 2 seconds in between them once they get back up to speed on the back straightaway. And here come the Fords and the Chevrolets at that time who had slotted in behind the Fords, and they just had a huge run. And then the Toyotas had nothing that they could do to cope with that speed and the horsepower that those guys had behind them and the momentum that they had behind them. So the Toyotas, after having that track position, they were in a good spot. They followed the back of that about 13, I think it was 12 or 13 car pack, single file train at the top. And that was basically it. Like I mentioned, Bubba Wallace had a loose wheel, so he had to come back down pit road. The Toyotas were the ones that ended up doing the 2-tire strategy, while the other 2 manufacturers, for the most part, did only fuel only. And you wonder if that played a huge impact in it as well, because I'm sure Bubba Wallace, if he was on the lead lap, he would have done something there at the end of things, and he and Hamlin could have worked something out. But not to say that they couldn't have done it even with Bubba being a lap down. But that entire green flag pit stop sequence just was really infuriating, as the entire race really was for me, to be honest. I probably feel a little bit more highly than you do in terms of how it all played out. But just your thoughts on maybe that entire sequence there that really led up to the Fords being out front with Logano and Hamlin actually being at the very back of that train.
Yeah, I think it's less about the group that pits first and more about just how many numbers you have. And Ford had the most people there, or the most cars. They go down and pit, they come out. The Fords on their own are essentially a pack with how many were left still. Chevys, they had more than Toyota, obviously, but still less than the Fords. And then Toyota, I don't really know what the game plan was there, because you're not going to be able to fit with 4 guys and be able to somehow come out any competitive there. But we saw it a couple times there. The first sequence, we didn't get to see how it played out because we were in commercial. But for that second one, for starters, I want to say props to Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin, though, because they took an impossible situation and made it somewhat serviceable, because Kyle Busch went low and then Hamlin went high. So it wasn't blocking them and like causing a big wreck and trying to block the run at the front. But by taking the 2 lanes, it basically cut the pack in half and made it so that the Toyotas could at least catch the draft again, stay in the pack, and at least be somewhat competitive there and see if they could work their way up or work anything there. And then that kind of fell apart when Bubba Wallace had to go and pit again. So they kind of lost their extra there. But the Fords played it to perfection. They had the most cars left. They were in the driver's seat there. They weren't in the lead. When they went in pit, they came out with the lead. They did it strong. The Chevys were kind of together, but not exactly in that pack. So I was thinking that they were going to maybe be a factor there at the end, but then the Toyotas just they didn't have the manpower there to really work anything. They needed to go down and pit with somebody else, and they weren't either able to do so, or they decided not to, and it kind of cost them a shot there at the end.
I just don't understand it. Like, why do you have to pit with the manufacturers? Like, I just think it's kind of stupid at this point, especially with the lack of, like, I just think you just go with a bigger group of drivers. Like, it just makes the most sense in leaving with a bigger pack, and then you have more momentum and a fighting chance. But I mean, anybody could see that result coming with only 4 Toyotas coming down pit road. Yeah. I mean, what are you thinking? Like, you're not going to have the speed to get up and have enough of a run to try and block off the Fords that are going to be coming with the whole head of speed with the Chevrolets behind you. Like, you got to pit with the Chevys or the Fords there if you're the Toyotas, or something.
I think the one thing that you could maybe point to and go, okay, I can maybe see why, is say you go down and pit with somebody and one manufacturer is taking fuel only and go, and then you're taking fuel and tires, or 2 or 4 or whatever. And then it's essentially the same thing where you've got one pack out front and then you're behind. But then again, then it's the exact same result as it is when you pit by yourself. So I really don't see the downside to it, unless it was something where they were caught off guard or something like that, which could be the situation. But yeah, for Toyota, they kind of fumbled the bag there.
They screwed the pooch there with that one.
Cost themselves a shot.
Yeah, it really did. And it came down to the end of things there, where after the green flag pit stops, it stayed green, and stayed green all the way to the end of it, where nobody was willing to make the move. Nobody wanted to be the first guy to pop out of line and go to the back of the pack, which is understandable. But you think with the amount of time that they had to work out a plan during the entire rest of the race, that they could figure something out where they're not stupid and wait till the last lap to pull off a move, or even coming to the white flag, at least in some cases for Keselowski. But like, the guys at the back of the pack, they were just satisfied with finishing in the top 10 with this Daytona 500. And I'm like, I mean, Hamlin said it afterward. He's like, I thought the Chevrolets were going to go, and they never went. Like, I don't know what the heck they're thinking. Like, Larson, Austin Dillon, you'd think some of these guys would be willing to make that move. I'm sure the Toyotas would have gone with them to get rid of the Fords. Like, I don't think the Toyotas can just do their own thing. Chevrolets can do their own thing, and Fords, you have to – this is the Daytona 500. It's NASCAR's biggest race. You're not here to finish second. You're here to win the damn race. And I felt like some of these guys, they were just here to finish the damn race and had the wrong mentality in the end of things. And at the end of the day, it's going to result in crash cars no matter when you make the move, I think. Like, it's just inevitable with how this package works and what the kind of blocks we see and the aggressive move drivers make. It's better to have the caution get out of the way before the final lap when the field is frozen and everything. Like, you have to expect that that's going to happen. But let's look at the final 2 laps of this thing, because it came down to that.
Just before that, I don't get why Chevy didn't pull down, because if you wait until that last lap or the second last lap, you're not going to have a chance, because you're not going to be able to do it and get organized and have a shot at getting that run if you pull down going into 3 and 4 on the last lap or something like that, which they ended up waiting for and basically didn't even end up doing. I agree in that regard. And honestly, waiting until that last lap is going to cause more of a wreck that we saw versus if you go down with 3 or 4 to go and you kind of get side by side, because the leader isn't going to be desperately blocking into 3 and 4 on the last lap, knowing that that's the only shot that they have. They're still going to be blocking, but it's not going to be okay, checkers or wreckers in this situation. There's going to be some kind of, okay, we can work out 2 lines here. We got Fords on the outside, so you've got your teammate behind you there. You can at least block with 3, probably the Fords that you had at the front there with Austin Dillon, Chase Elliott behind. They probably pulled down. You can figure out something there. It wouldn't have been the catastrophic, insane wreck that we saw at the end of the race when it's everybody going for it with no regard because it's the last lap going into the final corner. So it's a situation for this entire race where you knew what was going to happen. There was one way to avoid it happening, and none of the people decided to do it. And the onus is on the drivers in the strategy there. The package is good. The track's good. We know because we've seen it multiple times. We saw it multiple times this week. And instead, it was a situation where everyone decided to wait until the last possible moment. And when that happens, you know what the end result's going to be.
Yeah, it's just frustrating. Like, they wait the entire race to get there, like you mentioned earlier, and
literally the entire race, lap 16 to 199.
Yeah, like, you can't ask for any. You gave yourself a shot by playing this strategy. At least take that shot instead of just, And the
Chevys had the manpower to do something and make it work too.
Okay, there was at least 4 Fords in front of the Chevrolets there, because Custer got kind of shuffled out there in that one sequence, and then
Harvick did too.
That was coming to the white flag, but before that, it was 4 Fords at the front, then the 3 or 2 Chevrolets or whatever it was.
Yeah, because on the last lap, so just using it as a frame of reference, because that's the one that I have in my mind, you had obviously the 2 Penske's, the front row, but then you had RCR, Hendrick, and I think there was Larson right behind. Priest was in there. So you had like 4.
Priest, Chastain, and Larson. There's 5. There's 5 Chevrolets in that main pack.
5, and those are strong Chevrolets too. Like, those are all the ones that you would expect there to be in contention at the end. So
5 and 4 is more. 5.
Oh, wow.
What do you know, Chevrolet? You could have made a move. You could have made a move.
You had more manpower. Because of what he said afterwards, Denny Hamlin would have gone with the Chevys too. So
yeah. That's 6. And then you probably think Kyle Busch and even Bubba Wallace, because he was still there.
Denny's going, the rest of them are following.
Yeah, why not? Like, you follow the guy that's going to be, or stay in front of him. That's probably a good idea. Stay in front of Denny Hamlin. Like, it was just so frustrating. But let's take a look at the final 2 laps, because Joey Logano, then it was Kevin Harvick, then Brad Keselowski, then it was Michael McDowell. Cole Custer got shuffled out there in one sequence there. I think it was with Bubba Wallace. So then there was like 5 or 6 Fords at the front, but then they got shuffled back. So it was unfortunate for Custer, because he was actually running a pretty solid race up to that point, I thought, as well. But coming to the back straightaway here, entering turn 3, coming to the white flag, Brad Keselowski finally makes his move after sitting back about 5 car lengths coming off of turn 2 to get this massive run to go up there and challenge for the lead. Gets past Kevin Harvick. He can't block that run. Logano is able to block that run. So then it becomes the Penske duo at the front with Michael McDowell following suit. Harvick kind of gets shuffled there. He kind of does what he has to just keep the car in one piece for the most part there. And then They don't do anything in turn 1 or 2 on the final lap. They go into turn 3 once again, and it's another big run from Keselowski from the push from McDowell. And as expected, Joey Logano is going to be blocking, as anybody would in this situation.
Yes.
This is the Daytona 500. You have 2 corners left. You're within the shot of winning his second there. Keselowski going for his first, with a bunch of guys going for their first, namely McDowell behind them. You're going to block. Like, you just have to do that. And the bit run was just too big with this package. Keselowski gets to the inside of Logano going into 3. Logano pulls off a little bit of a late block, but understandable nonetheless. Logano gets turned, and then Michael McDowell gets into Keselowski's right rear corner, sends Keselowski up across the track. Kyle Busch door slams him right into the door. 190-mile-per-hour impact, took my breath away for obvious reasons. I'm going to be biased there. I'm going to be completely transparent. But then they, huge fire erupts between all these guys that are up against the wall. Logano, Cindric piles in, Cole Custer's in it, Chastain, Preece, Larson got a piece of it as well. All these guys got involved in this one, and Bubba Wallace. All these guys collected in turn 3 and 4. NASCAR has no choice but to throw the caution. Like, there's, if people are saying you can't throw the caution there,
correct decision there.
You have to throw the caution. No matter if you're a Chase Elliott fan, a Michael McDowell fan, Austin Dillon fan, you can't let them race back. You have to get the safety and the emergency personnel there as quickly as possible, because it was a very, very scary wreck. But at the end of it all, they throw the caution, and the field is frozen at the moment of caution. There was some debate on how Larson kind of got shuffled back in the running order, but because he lost control and didn't maintain speed, he falls back in position there. But at the end of the day, NASCAR freezes the field, and Michael McDowell wins the 63rd running of the Daytona 500. His first career victory in the NASCAR Cup Series and his 358th career start. That is the second longest streak in NASCAR history between a first career start and their first career victory. The longest, as I mentioned earlier, the 2001 Daytona 500 with Michael Waltrip going 462 starts between his first career victory and his initial start in the Cup Series. So, bit of correlation there. Dale Earnhardt was kind of mixed in throughout this entire race, it felt like. In the end result, it kind of did play a little bit into that. 2001, 2011, 2021, 10 years apart. There have been the underdog stories in these races in the Daytona 500. Waltrip in 01, Trevor Bayne in 2011, and of course, Michael McDowell here in 2021. Crew chief Drew Blickensderfer also collects his second career Daytona 500 trophy. His last came with Matt Kenseth with that 2009 Daytona 500 win. That was the rain-shortened Daytona 500 as well. So rain had an impact on both of these races for Drew Blickensderfer and Michael McDowell, a very good super speedway racer. He was up there at the front. The majority of the race was involved on that lap 14 incident there, and he got the car repaired. The spoiler was a bit damaged at the end of things, but it definitely did not hurt that car. It actually helped it by the end of things in what we've heard from all the post-race comments. So congratulations to Michael McDowell there. Was in the right place at the right time. The Penske cars take each other out. Keselowski was none too pleased with Logano on the late block, as he usually is with these late blockers on these Daytona 500s. And of course, Keselowski going for his first career trophy in this race. He's been trying for so long. He doesn't quite get there. He's put himself in the right position, ends up just getting crashed there. Nothing he could really do differently, and I think he played a really smart race there at the end of things. He put himself in the right position. Just at the end of the day, Logano pulled off the block, and it was just too much at that point in time going into turn 3. The treacherous spot on all these super speedway tracks, the furthest spot away from the spotters, it always seems to happen in turn 3 and 4. Like I said, vicious crash. It was very scary. And but at the end of it all, Kyle, Michael McDowell, the underdog himself, pulls off the unexpected. While there's a fire behind him, we remember back to the Texas race where he wrecked with the Aaron's Dream Machine, where he crashed in qualifying. In that fiery crash, he ends up in victory lane at the end of this one.
How about that? And just quickly on the wreck itself, yes, it was an extremely, extremely scary wreck. Anytime you have that much fire or anything involved, it's especially scary. There were some big secondary hits, which is always the thing you're worried about. The initial hits we've seen with these cars are usually okay. It's pretty rare you see somebody be injured or anything from an initial hit. These last couple of years, it's a lot of the secondary stuff we saw. That was the problem with Ryan Newman's crash. It was because he made the contact with the outside wall, he flipped in air, and then got hit upside down in probably the weakest point of the car, because you don't anticipate anybody being hit there. So in that regard, a very scary crash. Thankfully, everybody was able to walk away okay. But yeah, Michael McDowell, how about that? Like, this is the part about racing that I love. It's the guys that show up time and time again, that put the money into the sport, that show up every week, and do it because they love it. And Michael McDowell is somebody, as shown by the 357 Cup starts going into that Daytona 500, is somebody that has done the hard thing. He was once a top prospect coming over from open wheel racing, had a great season in ARCA, and Michael Waltrip Racing decided to take him in 2007 to 2008 from the ARCA series to the Cup series. And we have a hard time with people going from like trucks with a couple years experience all the way to the Cup series. Just fathom somebody like Chandler Smith last year or something, or Sam Mayer going from ARCA all the way to the Cup series. It's not going to be good for your development most of the time, I think is a fair thing to say. And that's exactly what happened with McDowell. He struggled that first year. He went to start in parks. He owns the record for most last place finishes in NASCAR history. And he comes through all of that, finds a ride with Front Row Motorsports, helps build them up from very much a 30th to 35th place team up into a mid-pack team. Last year, they have their best season ever. And all of a sudden, they're Daytona 500 champions. It's one of those stories that you love in motorsports. It's an awesome story. And it's something that's surprising, but not shocking. And in the way that Michael McDowell has always been in the conversation at super speedways. You look back to, I think it was 2010 or 2009 when he qualified his way in with the 50th fastest car through the duels. And after that, he had the interview where he said it felt like he wins the Daytona 500. Quotes like that coming up, just a remarkable story for somebody who has put their time in, who has put the work in, and gets rewarded here finally with a Daytona 500 victory. It's an awesome, awesome story, and I don't think it could happen to anybody better than Michael McDowell here.
Yeah, I mean, it is a great story and all. It's just, man, the whole situation was just frustrating. I probably would feel differently on, or more optimistic or more happy with the end result of it if the race wasn't as boring and bland as it was. And just how the finish all unfolded, it was just frustrating, just really, really frustrating as a fan to watch that race. It's so much hype, so much lead up, so many storylines. And at the end of it all, I just feel like, it's great for Michael McDowell. At the end of the day, I don't know. I just have mixed feelings on it. I think for me, just to wait that long for the race to unfold, and then at the end of it all, like, Michael McDowell is going to be in the playoffs this season. Like,
see, that's the part of it that shouldn't impact things. And that's what I hate about the playoff system and everything. It's when you get these underdog winners that should be the highlights of seasons and celebrated and cherished. They're tainted now because you're like, oh, that's going to take a playoff spot from somebody and blah, blah, blah. If we had a season-long championship like you used to, then these things would be celebrated and would be like highlights of seasons when you're like, hey, remember that time Michael McDowell won the Daytona 500? Now instead you're like, Michael McDowell won the Daytona 500, and then you're like, oh, but he's going to take X spot from somebody in the playoffs. And that's the part of it that I absolutely hate, because it takes an awesome moment away from somebody like Michael McDowell here. And you can look at it from the playoff perspective. To be honestly, I don't really care, because it's not going to affect anybody who's going to be in a championship hunt. So for me, I'm looking at a team that's been fighting the fight for a long time, a driver that's been fighting the fight for a long time, and they're rewarded with it here. And let's not forget, Michael McDowell is an awesome road course racer as well. One of his best tracks as well, Road America, has been added to the schedule as well. Let's not pretend like this is a 30th on place team like they used to be. This team finished top 25 in points. They finished 23rd last year. Those tracks that they struggled at have been taken off the schedule as well. There's more road courses. I think they're going to be in conversation for that like 20 through 25th place position in points. And that's not honestly far off from where Cole Custer was last year when he won and made his way in. So I'm loving this. I'm glad that it was that kind of finisher, because to me, it actually helped make the finish more worthwhile than having somebody who you maybe expect to win or a repeat winner or anything like that. I love seeing this kind of stuff. I love rooting for the underdogs. And I'm very happy for Michael McDowell here.
Alrighty. I don't know. I just think the The finish was just, yeah, I don't know. I can't stress it enough.
The finish sucked and the race sucked, but taking that away from it, the fact that Michael McDowell, like, I'm not talking about like how he won the race. I'm talking about the fact that he was the one that won the race here. And that's the exciting part of it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm as excited as you are, obviously. Like, I like the underdog
I want to
stories.
know the other perspective why, because for me, I only see this as an awesome result. So I want to know that other perspective of why it may not be this exciting thing.
I don't really have a rationale behind it. Like, I'm not for the the Great American Race, like the biggest race on NASCAR's season, and we have Michael McDowell kind of as like the face of it. Like, I just think there's just a little bit. I don't know. Like, I think there's just some other things that I would rather have had happen instead of Michael McDowell winning it. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's just not the big name that I was kind of anticipating. Not to say that it's a bad thing that we're having these secondary drivers winning these races, but at the end of the day, like, it's not going to, sell the tickets or anything like that for the sport. It's not going to be like that major headline that people are hoping for. And to be waiting all day for Michael McDowell to win it, I don't know. I just think it was just kind of,
for me, it's more worthwhile to wait that long and see Michael McDowell win than it is to wait that long and see Joey Logano win or Brad Keselowski win or Austin Dillon win, something like that. Like, having this story at the end of all of that redeems some of it for me. It doesn't make it lesser or anything like that. And the reason why we have super speedway racing is because it is something where everyone has a shot. And if it's a race where the best people win every single time, well, then why are we wrecking this many cars? Why not just go to another mile and a half where we'd have the same results for me? So it's why I like super speedway racing, despite all the cars that get wrecked and everything like that, despite the danger of it. It's because anybody has a shot if they show up. And Michael McDowell winning, Trevor Bayne winning, Michael Waltrip winning, back to 1990, Derek Cope winning. These are the stories that people always remember. It's the underdog winners. The finish, of course, was lackluster in the fact that we didn't get to the finish line, that we had such a big wreck, that it was such a scary wreck. But for me, there's nothing but positives from a Michael McDowell win. This is awesome.
I would feel differently if the race was better. I think that's what it comes down to for me. I don't know if it's necessarily that if Michael McDowell is the worst winner. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just if there was more to it, where it wasn't single file the whole time and we saw a little bit of passing and we saw different lines be able to create energy at the end of it, then I would feel differently, where Michael McDowell deserved this victory. Not to say that he doesn't. I'm just saying, like, he was just in the right place at the right time when people were playing it stupid at the end of it, where they just had one wreck and he was just in third place, where, the two front guys take each other out and that's how it ends. Not to say that it hasn't happened in the past. That's not what I'm saying. It's just like, I just think it's just so, like, how it all unfolded there. They didn't get back to the line. Of course, they had to throw the caution. There's just so many things in my mind that, like, it's just really, that's what it came down to at the end of it. And I don't know. I can't really explain it. I don't think. It's just frustrating, just really frustrating for me to just have watched that entire thing. And we've seen so many good races with this package, and that to be the Daytona 500, our biggest race of the season, have rain delay it. And then, I'm sure the ratings aren't going to be terrific out of this one as well.
Because we had a 6-hour rain delay because they didn't start it at noon. But I think the main part of it is that I'm isolating the winner from the race, and for you, it's you're meshing it, and I think that's the big difference. Because for me, race was disappointing, big crash at the end. It's not what you want to see, but to have such a big of this is literally something we've only seen one other time, somebody go this long into their Cup Series career and then finally win. And for Michael Waltrip, it was getting an opportunity with a team that was one of the best super speedway racers, obviously, with DEI there. For this one, it's even more of a remarkable story, because it's something where Michael McDowell has kind of been in the hunt all this time, but it's with a mid-pack back marker kind of team. It's not this kind of DEI team that has race winning ability. It's another one of these. It's a team that he's been at for multiple years here. It's a team that he's helped grow with. It's a team that he's grown with into a very solid and kind of underrated Cup Series driver. And so, I definitely understand where you're coming from, where you can't take away the race from the race winner. But for me, I couldn't care less about how that race went. Michael McDowell was a Daytona 500 champion, and that's pretty damn awesome.
The Love's car ends up in victory lane, not on
Exactly.
technically
Like
Valentine's Day. It's on the 15th at the end of things when the race ended, but when the race started here, he ends up in victory lane for Valentine's Day. So poetic in that sense, but yeah, just frustrating at the end of things, but for me at least. But a good thing for Michael McDowell.
Here, I'll cheer you up a little bit. One thing I'll say here is after this result, the randomizer has been retired. The randomizer will not be coming back.
What a joke.
Because if I didn't have a randomizer, I probably would have had Michael McDowell in my lineup. And because the last time I didn't have a randomizer, I had Michael McDowell in my Daytona regular season finale lineup. So the fact that I was robbed from an extra special Michael McDowell win, the randomizer has officially been retired after a nice little 3-point victory over you. Should I add?
I was a little bit upset as well. I was literally 3/4 of a lap away from getting the race winner pick right. Like I was so close. Like
I mean, that entire last however many laps that Joey Logano led, you knew he was not going to win the race because there was going to be a wreck involved with him.
You never know. There could be a wreck behind him. You never know. I'm just saying, like. I was just like, oh my God, it was just one thing after another. It felt like the stupid wreck on lap 14. Like all my safe guys are out, like, and to lose it by 3 freaking points after the stage one ending.
Did you really have any safe guys, to be fair?
McMurray, Newman, Jones, those guys I expected to
be. McMurray, I'll count as a safe guy, but Newman's always in the pack. Reagan's always in the pack.
They're going to play. Newman's always at the back. What are you talking about when he runs?
He was in the wreck because he was in the middle. He was in like the first 3 rows.
14. You can't just go to the back right off the get-go. Like,
nah, Newman's always in the mix. But
I wouldn't say he's in the pack, though. He's always setting himself up for the finish.
I disagree there. But it's not like the same like safe picks like a Spire Motorsports, which McMurray was. But like it's not like – for me, like the safe picks are the guys that are like in the second pack. They aren't in the mix. And it's like
second pack. How many times have we watched a super speedway race and Newman is being pointed out as, oh, he's in the back there? Like I've always, I remember I can count that on 2 hands probably as many times as I've like seen Newman in the back.
No, Newman is not a quote unquote safe pick, and we saw that in that first wreck. But anyways, that's arguing about stuff that's pointless right now.
Yeah. All right. Notable finishers time. Obviously, Michael McDowell, the winner.
Pretty notable.
That's about as notable as it can get. Chase Elliott comes within 1 spot, maybe a couple hundred yards of winning the Daytona 500 if the caution is thrown a little later there. But nonetheless, Chase Elliott comes home second there, his best career finish in the 500. Austin Dillon had an exceptional week at Daytona, scoring the most points over speed week.
He's your Cup Series regular season points leader right now.
Yes, he is. After his win in the duel and his 3rd place finish here, getting multiple stage points as well in this one. Pretty solid run there for Austin Dillon, a former Daytona 500 champion there. Kevin Harvick in 4th, got shuffled there coming to the white flag, but ended up coming back to finishing in the top 5 there. Denny Hamlin, his chance at going for 3 in a row comes to an end in this one. If he was up in the front, I bet you he could have done it. Like Denny Hamlin seemed like they had the fastest car. He led the most laps, 98 of the 200.
Still the top Toyota.
He was still the top Toyota at the end of the day, finishing 5th there. Ryan Preece in 6th. Ross Chastain in 7th. Jamie McMurray in his one-off race here in 8th place there. So a decent day there for McMurray come after that wreck that he was involved in on lap 14. Corey LaJoie had a pretty solid run there as well for Spire Motorsports. They had a pretty 8th and 9th finish for that organization. Is pretty remarkable here for their real first entry here for the 500 that is going to be in the mix throughout the entire season here with that 7 car. So nice to see there. Kyle Larson, I cannot believe that stupid randomizer got that right, that Kyle Larson gets a top 10 finish here.
10th place in back-to-back Daytona 500s for Larson.
Oh, God, frustrating. But Larson, he was involved in that one wreck there with Bell, but besides that, he's just kind of in the pack. I don't think he was necessarily the fastest car. We saw that over Speed Week as well, like in the duels. Just didn't quite have the speed that his Chevrolet teammates had. But a tentative start for Kyle Larson, but he still brings the car home with a top 10 finish. Cole Custer there in 11th. Then the four guys here that were involved in that last lap wreck that actually don't end up finishing on the lead lap. So I will take the over-under on that one in terms of that on our last episode.
That's right. It was getting close there. If we didn't get that big wreck at the end, it would have been like right on. You would have got it by 1. You got it. Yeah, it would have been right on that over-under. So we said it pretty well. I got to say the 14.5 10.5 was set pretty good.
If you set it at 10.5 here, we would have been just as close because of how it all ended up.
That's right. So, hey, we were on a good wavelength there.
Yeah. Joey Logano there, 12th, Brad Keselowski, 13th. All that's determined like as they were coming into the wreck. So it's not like the guy that was finishing further ahead in the wreck kind of thing is that's where you finish. It's just based off their running order from the previous timing loop. So Keselowski 13th there. Kyle Busch 14th. Both of those guys going for their first 500 have to wait another year to try and accomplish that. Austin Cindric in 15th for his first Cup Series start, ran a pretty solid race there. Didn't make any mistakes that were noteworthy there. Took a pretty hard lick there in the last lap wreck. I mean, I was, as a Kyle Busch fan, I was freaking out because I had the radio on and they asked him again. I got such an eerie feeling back to 2015 when he wrecked in the Xfinity Series race. Tony Hirschman asked him, "Is he okay?" And he never responded. And that was the same situation back in the Xfinity race. I'm like, oh God, I don't need this again. I can't handle this. And then thankfully I saw him come out of the car because he was not the first one out of the car. So I'm like, oh shoot, like I can't mentally handle this right now. But he ends up getting there. All the drivers are thankfully okay after that one. Bubba Wallace there in 17th place, did what he could throughout the majority of the race, had a very fast car.
Just sucked for him. If not for that, he would have been right there at the end of things and maybe
would have made something happen.
More.
He would have made something happen.
Yeah, if you have that extra Toyota there in the mix, he probably makes something happen there. But being a lap down, you can't be a guy that goes out and starts something because you're a lap down. Like it's just something you can't really do in that situation. It was good for him to kind of pull down and kind of drop out of the pack as well, going into 3 and 4. Just a little too late for him because he was still carrying too much speed once everybody wrecked in front of him, which was unfortunate to see. But a very, very strong opening week for 23XI Racing there.
For sure. Joey Gase there is the last notable finisher for me there in 20th place. Besides that, behind him, basically nobody finished the race within noteworthy mention. Like they were basically all DNFs or multiple laps down at the end of it. Like you can't do much in terms of making the notable finisher for this one. Joey Gase finished 4 laps down and finished in 20th place. So pretty hectic race here in terms of crashes and the amount of DNFs we had. Not the actual on-track product was chaos. It was just these big wrecks that got all these guys collected. And thankfully, a safety in NASCAR is once again proving why it is a miraculous invention that they've created over the past 20 years since the death of Dale Earnhardt. Like really impressive stuff there. So that's the notable finishers from the Daytona 500. That's basically it. I don't know. I don't have anything else really in terms to add. We have to rate the actual race itself. You're out of 10, Kyle. I'll let you go first.
Do we actually have to?
I'm not holding back.
I'm excited to see. I'm interested to see how we rate this one. But yeah, very much a letdown of a Daytona 500 for basically all the circumstances that led into it. It was like the worst case scenario for every single aspect of it. Early big one, which causes single file racing for most of the race. We get a lengthy rain delay. We do get it in that night, but then you have single file racing the entire time. You have a big crash at the end. You don't get a green flag finish. Like all this stuff compounded into what is a very much a letdown Daytona 500. And I'm still excited for this season. It's a bummer way to start for sure. But for what's been very, it was an extremely hyped up start to this year. And for what is always been an exceptional package, even the dual racing as well was very, very strong. Definitely a letdown for the opening race.
You gonna rate it out of 10 then? What do you think?
I don't know. That was just kind of my lead in. I'll go first. This is a fascinating one. So I don't really know where to put this one on the scale because it's not the worst race I've seen in my entire life. There was still interesting aspects. There was the strategy of it. There was the history on the line. Like there was still some storylines to watch. But it was a significant letdown. You had a big crash at the end, which I don't like seeing. I know there's some people who watch NASCAR for the wrecks. I'm not one of those people. I know you aren't either. But what I'll say is going into the finish, I probably would have said something like a 3 or a 4. With the winner, Michael McDowell, I'm going to bump that up to what I gave the Xfinity race a 6, right?
I think we both gave it 6 or something like that.
I think you gave it a 6.5, and then I gave it a straight 6. Yeah, because I gave Truck Series an 8. I gave Xfinity 6. So the first number that popped in my head was a 5. Only one step below the Xfinity race. I'm not certain, so I'll give it a 4.5. I think there was too much single file racing. The end of the race was extremely disappointing in that regard. Michael McDowell winning bumps it up a little bit for me, but overall, I think you have to factor in the fact that it was hyped up that much as well. Definitely the worst super speedway race we've seen with this package, and a very, very disappointing Daytona 500.
I'm not holding back. I'm giving it a 2. Like I thought it was a pretty terrible race.
I don't think it was that bad.
Like I think it was that bad, because single file racing with this package, and not to say, we still had high caliber drivers out there that are willing to make moves. We've seen it in the past. They can do stuff. They just didn't want to do stuff. And I understand for the first,
no reason to do stuff.
For the first 2 stages, I can understand the single file. I wasn't expecting anything else, but like, as the laps ran on, like, you have to think that one of those guys is going to make a move, and nobody made a move. Like we said, and everybody knows nobody made a move. Everybody was kind of, upset with how it all played out there at the end. A lot of those guys at the back of that train were like, what the heck's going on here? Like, what are you doing? It's just, and then that wreck really scared the crap out of me. Like, I never like seeing that amount of fire, and just the collisions at that amount of speed. It was just breathtaking, really. And that early wreck, like, I was like, oh my God, like, what are you doing, guys? It's lap 14 of 200. You're not going to win the race. Larry Mack said it best. You cannot win the race on lap 25, but you can certainly lose it. And those guys decided to do it. And I just frustrating, very, very frustrating how this Daytona 500, and like you said, the hype up to it, I was ecstatic about this race coming into it. Like, I don't remember the last time I was really this excited for Daytona 500 with the package that we saw the entire last season, and the amount of new movement and a lot of drivers, new teams. I mean, we didn't even get to see Trackhouse and Daniel Suarez really have a shot in this one. I was really looking forward to seeing that battle between 2311 and Trackhouse in this one on neutral kind of playing field here. They look solid, both of them at similar speed in the duels and in qualifying as well. A lot of storylines were taken out of it that we really wanted to see. And at the end of it all, I just kind of left in shock of how it all kind of played out. So I can't give it higher than a 2.
Yeah,
I can give it 2.5.
That's very fair. That's very fair. And for me, I'm raising it up more than I would. Like, if without McDowell as the winner, I probably would have given it a 3. But I'm bumping it up because the finish is the most important part of the race. And yes, we had the big wreck early, and you knew you were going to get that single file racing throughout it. I didn't hate it because it was saving cars for the end. We didn't get anything with that ending, though. But the finish had a good winner, had an exciting winner for me, and that's the most important part of it. So if we had kind of a same old winner, then I think I'd be much more in line with your thinking for rating the race. But because we got the McDowell winner, it bumps it up a little bit for me. But very much a lackluster, bland, whatever word you want to describe it there, Daytona 500.
For the amount of talk that we heard throughout the entire broadcast of, look at these guys, they're trying to practice for later in the race with these runs. And, we saw it. We saw it for the entire 160 laps, basically leading up to that final 20 stretch of these guys practicing their runs, laying back a little bit, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't. They had an entire race full of practice here.
I still don't know why the Chevys didn't go and try to do something. Going into 3 and 4, the Chevys were not going to win the race in that position. No. In any situation, because if they wreck like that, boom, the caution goes out. If they don't wreck, well, then one of the 3 Fords up front is going to win. Yeah. Either Logano blocks him and he goes out and wins the race, either Keselowski gets by him, or McDowell splits the difference. Nobody behind them had a shot as soon as they came out of 2, and nobody made a move. No. So I still don't know what they're doing. I haven't seen anyone talk to any of the Chevy drivers there, or see any comments from them post-race, or see anything from that as to what their thinking was. But very much disappointing there, because you knew the potential that it had, even when a bunch of the cars were out at the end. And it just kind of seemed like everyone was kind of complacent there. Yeah,
like, there's no risk really to even going out of line there with 5 to go, because it's such a short group of people up at the front. If the 5 Chevrolets, if it doesn't work and they end up at the back of the pack, they can always try again. It's not like there's 20 cars behind them. There's like 6 cars, 5 cars behind the Chevrolets that do something. And I'm sure that they would have gotten in the mix of those Toyotas or some of these other stragglers at the back.
It might have made it easier if they went earlier, messed up, and went to the back, because then they all would have been together at the back.
And they would have known that it didn't work what they tried, so they can do something different.
We heard it a bit in the Xfinity race as well when Tony Stewart was talking, and was talking about how you don't understand why all these people wait until the last possible moment, because if you go early and it doesn't work, well, then you have a chance to do it again.
Exactly.
And all these kind of things. And just a very, very frustrating.
Head scratcher. It's a head scratcher.
I think frustrating is the best word to describe it, because it encapsulates the hype that we had for it and the potential that we knew this race had even after the opening wreck, and just kind of fell flat from the crash, the yellow flag finish, and everything involved there. I'm happy for Mike McDowell. I'm excited. I'm probably going to buy a Daytona 500 champ shirt or something like that here coming, because who knows the next time we're going to get that kind of underdog finisher or winner. It seems like we get it once a decade to begin the decade. If you look at the last 01, 11, and now 21. But yeah, and I'm excited to see this 34 team. Hopefully this means that they put more emphasis into kind of their specialties. Super speedways, we know they show up obviously, but more emphasis under their road course package as well. I wonder how McDowell does this upcoming weekend at the Daytona road course. I'm excited to see him throughout the season. And hey, he's got 5 playoff points in his back pocket. I don't think making past like the first round or anything is the goal of this team. The goal of this team is to pick up consistent points once they get to the playoffs, because only the championship 4 are locked into the top 4 come the end of the season. Every place matters for this team in terms of the money involved. Winning the 500 is huge for this team, obviously, in terms of the notoriety and everything. But the most important part is the money involved. That's a huge purse for this kind of team. A guaranteed top 16 finishing position is huge for this team as well. And if they can pick off a couple of places with a strong finish at Talladega, with a strong finish at the Roval in the playoffs as well, maybe a couple other strong finishes there in the playoffs, if they can pick up 1 or 2 spots in the playoffs, that's huge for this kind of team. It's huge for the development of this team. We saw with them winning the fog race with Chris Buescher, them making the playoffs. After that year, they improved in terms of the quality of the race team. So you can look at it and you can be disappointed for an underdog kind of guy who, quote unquote, doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs to be there. But the long-term benefits are huge for this kind of team, and I'm very excited for Michael McDowell for Front Row Motorsports to get that 3rd ever victory and get one in the biggest race of the year.
Yeah, if it was David Reagan, I'd be a little bit more excited. I have to say that. If it was the other front row guy, I would definitely be a bit more hyped on this one. But yeah, it is what it is at the end of the day. Congratulations to Michael McDowell. That's the most important thing. I don't want to make it seem like I'm too upset with it, but it is a really great honor for him and that entire team. This is no fluke, like Denny Hamlin tweeted out. This guy, this is a guy that's been on the super speedways, a guy that is always in the mix. It seems at the end of these things, and he finally gets his day here at the Daytona 500, the biggest race of the season. So good to see the raw emotion from him in victory lane. They had a good celebration when he got back to North Carolina today with a couple of people waiting there at the airport, some drivers, some family members, of course. Pretty cool to see that the sport is, he's enjoying the moment here with as best as he can. Of course, it's not the ideal situation in victory lane where his team can't really be with him there. It's not as we've seen in all the other Daytona 500s where the guy's jumping off the car into the crew members or Gatorade shower. He didn't quite get that full experience, but I'm sure at the end of the day they'll be partying. He still hasn't slept apparently.
I don't think he'll be complaining too much.
No, he's got the Harley J. Earl Trophy to his name here, and I think it's a great honor for anybody in the sport. It's what every kid dreams of when they make it to NASCAR. They want to win the Daytona 500, and Michael McDowell accomplished his dream here. So that's all the news recap notes that I've got for this one, Kyle. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this episode, the special Daytona 500 recap?
Yeah, well, we're staying in Daytona for this next week. We're going to the road course now, and very, very interesting coming into this one because you've still got some of the open entry kind of storyline with it, with AJ Allmendinger. We don't know what Colley's going to bring to the table in terms of the Daytona road course, but that's going to be fascinating there. I'm super excited to see what somebody like Chase Briscoe can do in really his first kind of true showing in the Cup Series here as well. It's a track, a discipline that he's kind of touted as being extremely good at, to the point where people are picking him to win road course races in his first season. So I'm excited to see how things play out. We saw at the Busch Clash, the 750 horsepower package was significantly better and more entertaining than the 550 horsepower package that we saw last year. So even though the Tri-Oval was a dud, I'm still pretty excited coming into the road course here from what we saw in the Busch Clash and all the storylines and everything coming into that race.
For sure. It's I'm looking forward to it after a bit of a down week here in terms of the momentum that was built up to be let down. I hope that the air doesn't fully come out of the balloon here. They can re-up it, they can fill it back up here at the Daytona road course. And we're staying down in Florida for the next couple of races. Remember, we got Homestead after that. So should hopefully be a 2 good race stretch here to really kind of kick off the season here.
Yeah.
We'll
and if you're feeling too bad, just go watch highlights from the truck race, because that was nuts.
Yeah, we'll give the Truck Series the honor of having the best race of the Speed Weeks this season. And I don't know. I don't think we really maybe expected that to be the case, but because of the Cup Series and what we've seen in the past with the Super Speedway package. But
the Truck Series is always nuts.
It is, but what we've seen in the Daytona 500 and everything in years past, it was like it's going to be like a head-to-head kind of thing between those two. But at the end of the day, Truck Series, based off of our rankings, gets the best grade of the Speed Week this season. So congratulations to that series on getting that honor. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Green Flag. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at The Green Flag Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. We really appreciate it. That kind of does it for our Speed Week coverage for this year. Been a busy time. It's been a lot of fun. Just kind of going race by race, day by day, bringing you the latest and greatest in NASCAR. And we've had a whole bunch of different storylines outside of that. McLaren just launched their car today, so we'll be recapping and just kind of bringing you up to date on everything that's happened over the past couple of days. In the next episode, which will be later on this week, we'll have our fantasy preview once again for the Daytona road course, where I don't have Clint Boyer as my kind of hidden gem pick this year. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of digging here to try and go 1-1 with Kyle on the season. He gets the win. So congratulations to you, Kyle, on getting the Daytona 500
only 3 points up, though. We'll be looking at like the season long, because we've got the league now, which of course, if you're listening and you haven't joined it yet, go join our league and have some fun with that as well. But yes, I'm only 3 points up though, but in the head-to-head, 1-0 does feel pretty good.
Pretty brutal. It's pretty brutal.
I'm a super speedway specialist. What can I say?
Yeah, randomizer's got your number right now. I'll hopefully regain my form on these ovals and the road courses.
Even the Daytona regular season finale, I had you beat as well when I did pick the lineup as well. So
I just don't do well in these super speedways. I have the Kyle Busch luck in fantasy with these super speedways, so it makes sense in that regard. But yeah, been a fun ride the past couple of days. We'll be back kind of our 2 episodes per week format here. We could have something potentially fun coming up this week as well, so maybe stay tuned for that. We'll see what happens on that storyline. But for this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman. Signing off for now. We will talk to you later this week to preview the Daytona road course.